The summer I was 7, the old house on the hill learned my name. I could hear it in the hinge of the kitchen cabinet when the day grew hot and the air smelled of lilac and ink. It wasn't an active listening, as you'd expect from a creature with ears. It was more like a memory leaning toward you, as if the walls remembered the exact moment you pressed your small palm against them and asked to stay. In those days, the house wore sunlight like a shawl and drew it back into shade, as if it were a creature that enjoyed secrets. Marta and I found the box behind the pantry, where tins rusted and the plants weaved through the cracks of the floorboards. The box was dull as a hinge wedge, a stubborn thing that had refused to yield for years. It contained a photograph blurred at the edges, the kind that makes a child's face look older than it should, of a girl who looked like me, only thinner, with a smile that trembled as if afraid to be noticed. There was also a small brass key and a single torn page from a children's book, margins scuffed as if the book had tried to tear away and couldn't. The house watched us, and we learned to listen to its hints. We weren't frightened at first. We were curious, as children are, when the world trembles at the edge of a cupboard, and you wonder what you might find if you tug the door just a little further. We began a game we did not name, a ritual we did not understand, though we whispered about it with the seriousness of old people who know how to keep a graveyard under their thumbs. We laid the items in different rooms, close to the places they reminded us of, and we spoke the names of the rooms aloud, as if the house would blush at the reminder of them. In the pantry, the box lay on the cool tile. We spoke the names of the rooms, and the house answered with a draft that bent the page and turned the photograph's glass toward the ceiling, catching the light as if the room itself breathed. The attic door, always stubborn, always a little too proud, would take a breath, and for a moment you felt you could step through to another time, another version of this same house. The first time it happened, it was a misshapen breath more than a sound, a whisper slipping between the boards of the walls, a coarse hiss like a rind you peel away from a fruit too quickly. We followed it, as one follows a thread through the seam of a quilt, until we reached the attic. There, the light was pale and unreal, and the air tasted faintly of salt and something sweet, like old cravings. The photograph's eyes seemed to watch us with more interest than a portrait should bear. The girl in the image blinked, and I thought the room blinked with her. The odour of rain pressed through the window, even though the sun bore down outside. It felt like a mouth that would answer if you asked, but only after you asked the right question in the right way. That summer, Marta taught me the name of the ritual without naming it. If we whispered the right names in the right order, the house would slump into a quieter mood. And sometimes, if we were very precise, it would tell us something that sounded like a memory we hadn't earned yet. The day we completed the set with the brass key, the attic sighed, and the photograph brightened in the frame, as if it had decided to smile for us. The next morning, Marta did not come to the old porch where the wisteria curled its fingers around the railing. She never returned to that house again. The grown world told me Marta ran away, or that she'd fallen asleep in a field somewhere and forgot to wake up. The adults gave reasons that made sense in public, but in the half-light of my old kitchen, I could hear the noise of a room you cannot leave behind. Rooms, doors, the unspoken pact that a house makes with a child. I did not tell anyone what the house and I knew. I did not confess that after Marta vanished, the house grew quieter, not silent, and that the silence remembered what we did. years became a careful scaffolding around me. And I learned to live with the late afternoon creaks, the way the wallpaper seemed to follow you with 2 or 3 slow, patient eyes. The photograph stayed on the mantel in my aunt's house long after the rest of the past settled away. It looked out with the same faintly frightened gaze as it had behind the attic window that day, and I found my own life becoming gentler, more precise, as if I'd learned to place myself where the house could watch me without feeling obliged to shout. Now, in my own small room in the corner of the same hill, the photograph sits again on a faded shelf, and the house outside the window breathes in a rhythm I recognize with the slow ease of an old friend. The air smells of winter rain, even when the sky is clear. The brass key sits on the dresser, cold and heavy with a weight that seems to press into the palm just by looking at it. And whenever I move the key, the house seems to listen more closely. If I hover near the doorway and listen, the air inside the house carries a memory of a child's voice asking, almost afraid, if a house can forget. And the house answers with the smallest hiss of a sigh, as if to say, not yet. Tonight, as the clock on the mantel ticks with a patient, stubborn sound that refuses to hurry, I stand by the window and see, in the glass, a girl who does not belong to the present, who looks almost like the girl in the photograph, but older and younger. All at once, she keeps a careful distance, a respectful breath away from the present self, and she wears the same dress as the photo, a pale blue that has grown dull with time. Her eyes are mine when I was younger and not yet sure what I knew, but felt it closing around me, like a small hand around a blood-wreathed toy. The house keeps the secret that numberless rooms knit together. The secret of why she vanished, why Marta never spoke again in the truth of daylight. I will tell you only what has become clear to me with the ache of age. The ritual did not bind time so much as bind me to a memory I could not forget, a memory that remembered me as well. The girl in the photograph, the one who looks back at me with the tremor of a somewhere lost smile, was not a distant relic of my childhood. She was the tiny version of me who learned to listen to the house long before I learned to listen to myself. In the attic, I keep a small, stubborn box. It is not the tin box we found all those years ago, but a new, heavier thing that fits in my hands with a weight that feels almost like a heartbeat. Inside this box, I found a letter written across years, as if the hand that penned it travelled with the tempo of the seasons. It is a letter I recognize, though I do not remember writing it. My hand is my handwriting,